This is Victor Thornton. He is my great-great-grandfather. Born in America at a time when slavery was still the law of the land in the United States, Victor did not let the oppressive conditions that he was born under define him. This is American history. This is Black history, and this is my history. The history of one of my own ancestors and how the land that he homesteaded has been in our family for over 125 years.
You know, one of the lines that has become clear to me in Kendrick Lamar's performance is 40 acres and a mule. It was something that was promised enslaved people. I never really equated 40 acres and a mule, but in thinking about it this morning, I never really equated it with something else that was very important to American life, which was the Homestead Act. So they offered 160 acres free and clear, and that was the beginning of generational wealth for a lot of white people. Think about that. Think about how you'd feel if that promise was made to you, and then you were just blown off.
You just heard Helen Cassidy talk about how formerly enslaved people were not given what was promised to them. As she put it, whites were allowed to build generational wealth from the land that was given to their forefathers. Meanwhile, the vast majority of formerly enslaved persons were relegated to being sharecroppers on the same land that they were formerly enslaved on. But this is Victor Thornton. He is my great-great-grandfather. Born in America at a time when slavery was still the law of the land in the United States, Victor did not let the oppressive conditions that he was born under define him. While the vast majority of formerly enslaved persons became sharecroppers, my great-great-grandfather took a different route. He fought for his 160 acres and became a homesteader. Over 125 years later, portions of this land are still owned by my family, but unfortunately, the next 125 years are not guaranteed. Ironically, the South African petrochemical company Sasol is buying up the land that was originally homesteaded by my ancestors. Sasol, which was originally created during the apartheid era in South Africa to avoid international sanctions. And today, it's here in America. For those residents who now call this land home, their cancer rates and the polluted waters have taken their own toll. What town is this, you ask? It's Mossville, Louisiana. Founded in 1790 by Jack Moss, a formerly enslaved person. My family roots run deep in this community, going back to my great-great-great-grandmother. Many relatives, including my own grandfather, who raised me, is buried there in Mossville. This ancestral land is special. Here I am walking on land that was originally homesteaded by our ancestor, Selena Thornton. Selena Thornton had a homestead of 80.56 or 59, a little bit over 80 acres of land. And she homesteaded that land here in what is currently known as Mossville, Louisiana. Here I'm standing in the parking lot of this church that was erected, or correction, was organized in 1866. It is the Mount Zion Baptist Church. And this has been the longest continuously operated African-American church here in Calcasieu Parish, again, dating back to 1866. And of course, we know that slavery was abolished in 1865, so 1 year after slavery, this church was actually started here. Now, this is not the original building. This particular building here was erected in the 1950s, when Mossville was a very, very, very thriving community. Nowadays, back over here to the east of Mossville, the Sasol refinery essentially is encroaching on land that was originally the land of Mossville. And so we've seen a number of, I guess you can frame in terms of ecological racism here in Mossville. Dumping out here, that was in the 80s into the 90s. And also here, the South African company, petrochemical company Sasol, which essentially has been buying out folks here, and this town is now a town that is dying. The two ancestors in my family, as mentioned, Selena Thornton as well as Victor Thornton both had homesteads out here in this area of Mossville, Louisiana. And this particular plot of land, like I said, was homesteaded by Selena Thornton. And there was another 80 acres of land that was homesteaded by Victor Thornton, which is my grandfather's grandfather, maybe about 3 or so miles in this direction. In a strange twist of fate, blessing, my grandfather, Jesse Thornton, is also buried out here on this land, the same land that Selena Thornton homesteaded. So it does give me an opportunity to draw some comfort, knowing that my grandfather's final resting place is actually on land that was founded by folks that share his last name and his ancestry. And the unfortunate story of corporate greed and ecological terrorism perpetrated on communities of color must not be repeated elsewhere. If you want to know more about this town and see how modern-day ecological terrorism is perpetrated on communities of color and how that works to destroy historically black towns, click on this link here or see the description below. Oh, and as a footnote, my great-great-grandfather Victor Thornton, he was not merely interested in making things better for himself or his offspring. Grandpa Victor was a serious community organizer. He served on the finance committee for the Negro Business League, and he was responsible for raising money to bring Dr. Booker T. Washington to Southwest Louisiana to speak. Additionally, my great-great-grandfather was instrumental in raising money to support African American soldiers who were on their way to serve during World War I. Think USO for Negro soldiers during World War I. Today, I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. I am thankful for what they did, and I am thankful for their blood that runs inside of my veins today. I encourage you, dig into your own family history and get to know your ancestors and see how they could have made a difference to make our world a little bit better.